Today we're getting mysterious Vogue Portugal, keeping things spooky with Vogue Italia, and catching disco fever with Vogue France. My name is Marco, welcome to the Model Gene, and if you're ready to dissect this month's covers, hit that like button and let's get started on October's Battle of the Covers. Starting off with Vogue US, we have Lady Gaga by Ethan James Green, and my first question is, why wasn't this the cover for the September issue? This is so much more interesting than the covers last month by Baz Luhrmann. Very fashion forward, everything I expected but didn't receive last month. Ethan James Green is doing a really nice job with his Vogue US covers, and this cover captures Lady Gaga to where you really see her identity shine through. Do yourself a favor and check out her performance of Happy Mistake on Jimmy Kimmel. Florence Pugh's British Vogue cover, another messy and terrible cover from the magazine. Her body looks so uncomfortable, but beyond that, the storytelling here is unclear. Photographer Venetia Scott loves a vintage aesthetic, oftentimes with very successful results, but in this cover, I'm not buying the story, the woman, the narrative. Vogue France's cover with Anaki Eye is so gorgeous. I absolutely love this cover of her. Unlike the British Vogue cover, I know this woman. I can hear the music in the background of this photo, the temperature in the room. Everything in this fantasy is crystal clear. Anak is also deeply into character, a sexy seductress, and of course using her body to not only tell that story, but also show off this garment by establishing her silhouette with her hand on her hip, while the raised arm shows off the pleats. Thank you, Mikael Jansson. This is what I want from Vogue France. Vogue Italia's cover of Monica Bellucci by Tim Burton is once again another cover from a director that is unable to translate his style from movies to fashion photography. I will say, the one nice element of this cover is that the eyes of this cave fit well into the Vogue logo, but she does not look her best when the camera is so low and we don't see the whites of her eyes. As soon as I saw this, I immediately thought this dress was the wrong look for this cover. I'd put her in a red dress, draped down the stairs like an unfurled tongue. I then went on Monica's Instagram, et voila, we have the original sketches by Tim Burton with that exact concept. I wonder if the cover image they selected was advertiser related, because this alternative image is much stronger. The dress they used for the cover is Ferragamo, and the red one that works better for the concept is made by the costume designer Colleen Atwood. Vogue Portugal gives us 4 covers for the mystery issue. My favorite is of Ola Rudnika, with this frothy wig and obscured eyes. A portrait where the eyes are covered is not something I would typically say is a good idea, but here it absolutely works and heightens the mystery. The same goes with the portrait of singer Marisa Liz. It is difficult to decipher exactly what is going on in the image. You can see from the BTS video that there were several iterations with different elements shot behind glass before selecting this smart use of cobalt blue that jumps off the page. My one criticism is that they used a celebrity but made her unrecognizable, which doesn't bother me since I have no idea who this woman is, but I imagine her fans would like to see more. Lisa Ostanina's cover is my second favorite, very moody and dark, the oxblood lip and the dark blush with the cool toned skin. It could have worked without the image having these offset vertical shards, but I don't mind it here. Lastly, we have this very cinematic cover of some influencer. A shame to use her instead of the model, but a lot better than ELLE Nogueira's normal work. Besides the casting, I think the image would have benefited from a stronger directional lighting, like if part of her face was lit up by the lights of another car, something sharper and more dramatic, but otherwise it's a pretty cool cover. Blackpink's Jenny is on the cover of Harper's Bazaar US. This should be better. Jenny has such a pretty face, but this photo lacks tension in her face, her body, everything is too passive. Looking at the 7 covers of Harper's Bazaar Italia, you can clearly see what elements make a successful black and white image. In the studio shots, the light is punchy and high contrast. The blacks are very black, the whites are very white. I think this is the most successful image. I mean, yes, the braid bob combo looks stupid, but wiggetry aside, I like the lucite bangles, the unique pose, the dark lip and eye. With the outdoor shots, the best ones are the covers where there is a clear differentiation between highlights, shadows, and midtones. Without the newspaper hat, the image still would have worked, but the white of the paper does lift the image. Libby Bennett's cover as well, the simple black and white dress cuts through the visual noise of this street in Paris. In the cover of Vivian Roner, there isn't enough contrast to give the viewer a clear focal point. Beyond that, I find this to be a horrible cover. The model's body is doing nothing, there's no energy in the scene, this is a waste of an image. Ella McCutcheon suffers from the same lack of contrast, but the light is nicer on her face. For Harper's Bazaar France, this cover of Karolina Spakowski wants to be a color image, and I don't know what the actual colors were, but something like this would have been interesting. This silhouette and visor are asking to be in color, and I don't know how else to explain it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Black and white or color here? Irina Shayk's sporty cover is made more interesting by the different color text, barely, but I am wondering what is going on with the can. This is pure speculation, but when I zoom in, it looks like the image was cut from the background. So it is very possible that there was a Coca-Cola can that was replaced by this canned water brand. Again, no idea if that was the case, but thematically, a soda can doesn't make sense with her looking like she went for a run, but graphically, a colorful can would have added some intrigue to this uninteresting top. Harper's Bazaar Greece has perhaps the most untalented and perplexing of all Victoria's Secret angels, Behati Prinsloo. I cannot fault the stylist or photographer. I think they actually did a really nice job in these covers, but she is incapable of emoting in a photograph. The lines of her body are wonderful here, and then you get to her face, holding back a sneeze, I think. Side note, I used to work for an artist management agency in New York City. Gaia Rock was one of the biggest photographers they represented at the time, and when I was there, we were working on the production of a Lancaster campaign where the client wanted to use Behati again. This woman is so incredibly delusional about her fame, her agent was trying to change the creative direction of the shoot, arguing that it is completely unsafe for Behati to be photographed outside, mind you, in an abandoned naval yard where there's no public access, because she would be hounded by paparazzi and her security guards wouldn't be enough protection for an A-list celebrity like her. For Harper's Bazaar Taiwan, we have the potential for a great cover, but a half-baked execution. Afghan hounds lend themselves to fashion imagery with their silky blonde hair, whether it's this photo of Davima from 1955 shot by Richard Avedon, or more recently this campaign for Klarna. In the photo with Davima, we have the dog as an elegant contrast to the model's severity, or in other cases, where the dog is mimicking the subjects, very 101 Dalmatians. If the model had billowing blonde hair, I'm thinking of these famous shots of Twiggy, it would have been a stronger image. Also, her coat on the cover has this Mongolian sheep trim, which is not silky like the dog's, it is curly like a wet poodle or a Portuguese water dog. There are too many discordant elements of what is otherwise a nicely lit cover, with a beautiful model and equally beautiful co-stars. Eva Mendes is on the cover of Vogue Mexico, and what immediately jumps out is the digital noise added here. This attempt to mimic the grain of film photography does not look nice here, and when you look at the rest of the editorial, you can see how much artificial noise they added into this cover. This serves as a warning to photographers out there. If you want the film look, shoot on film. Don't overdo the noise in Photoshop. GQ's cover of Beyoncé is surprisingly bad for someone who is so controlling over her public image. This double-stacked wig looks silly, and a compositive image doesn't feel expensive. Tyla's cover of Elle is okay. Everything is very champagne-colored. I just wish there was more of a catchlight in her eyes. She has such an extraordinary face. I would have gotten the camera really tight in that work of art. I don't understand the draped fabric here. I would have just preferred this form-fitting top. Of the 8 covers for another magazine, my favorite is actually of Bill Skarsgård. He has such an angelic look here, it makes me think of the fish tank scene in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. There is a surrealist element to the cover, and it definitely draws you into the image. The cover of Awar is also nice. Your eye is guided across the image by the swoop of her hair and the path created by her arm. The black frame I do not understand as much. I think they wanted a visually grounding element, but at this crop, it is unclear exactly what I'm looking at. The other covers do not warrant much of a discussion, they are more of an exercise on mediocrity. Elle España has Valentina Sampaio on the cover, which is pretty, but also just looks like a worse remake of this Elle Serbia cover from 2017 of Rosie Huntington Whiteley. I prefer Rosie's cover. The slouch in the jacket and her soft expression make that image more compelling. We have 5 covers for Muse magazine, and overall they are quite strong. Abuli's cover by Casper has depth of tone and emotion. I love the rawness of the image, her pensive expression, and the contrast of her tattoos with a very traditional string of Chanel pearls. Abby Champion's cover is okay. I like the wind in the hair, her leaning body, but something in the face feels unnaturally brightened. Amber Valletta's cover is powerful and also a stretch for photographer Norman Jean Roy. A lot of his work relies extensively on heavy color grading, but here we have a simple vision. The one thing I would change is Amber's hand on her hip. I wish we had fingers rather than a fist. This cover is simple, but a great study on utilizing the lines of your surroundings to keep the eye traveling. We have the staggered wall, the diagonal street lines, and her own angles that are playing with the gravity of the image. Rejoice Chuo's cover by Robbie Rodriguez has certain elements that I enjoy, the depth of the blues and the highlights on this leather jacket, but it is just one of the many images of dark-skinned black models that are underexposed with their eyes covered or not visible. In isolation, you could say, oh, they just wanted to photograph this hat, and that covers her eyes. But when you look at the repetition of this across fashion photography, there is a pattern here. Of the 3 Numero covers, we have the standard gray background boring covers that are not worth mentioning, but Sylvester Mako's cover of Steinberg is way more interesting. I don't know exactly what is going on with the fabric she has covered herself with, but it does add a lot of texture. Her body is also creating visually interesting shapes, but she is so incredibly thin, I do find the image difficult to look at. Of the self-service covers, Lisa Winkler's cover is really not great at all. All the body contours are flattened by this light, but the other 2 covers by Ezra Petronio give an insight into the modeling industry. We have the established Mika and the newer model Matilda, photographed in the same angle in a very similar way. When I saw Matilda, it was very clear that photographers were shooting her as a duplicate to Mika. They have similar hair, teeth, and other facial features. This is how people simply use models as interchangeable archetypes, trying to find one look and then as many iterations of that same look, rather than highlighting the uniqueness of a model. Mika is most often photographed in the exact same way, this messy curly hair in a slightly androgynous way, and now the same fate will befall Matilda. Every once in a while, someone like Alec Weck or Gemma Ward comes along and changes the look of the industry, but more often than not, it is all about fitting a model into an easily identifiable box. GQ Portugal has Ross and Rocky Lynch as 2 of their cover stars, very generic and predictable images of a band whose fame centers not around music, but that Ross Lynch wiggles around shirtless on stage. I prefer the cover of both of them. I like the way the image is balanced with the pair. Rocky has his legs open, arms together, the opposite for Ross, but I do think he should be wearing a necklace. The other cover of Noah Monteiro is perplexing to me. Maybe I'm being overly sensitive and protective, but I do not think it is appropriate to have a shirtless 14-year-old with his underwear showing on the cover of a magazine for adults. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know in the comments if you think this is fine, if the photo would be perceived the same way if it was a 14-year-old girl with her underwear showing. And that is where today's review is going to end. But for more about the fashion industry, check out the links below. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the covers this month, and be sure to subscribe to find out who comes out on top next month in the battle of the covers.